At a quiet cemetery, a little girl spots a lonely millionaire crying at his mother's grave. He says just 2 words that make the girl stop in her tracks. From that moment, secrets unfold, secrets tied to a forgotten past, lost family, and a truth so powerful it could change both of their lives forever. Before starting the story, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you don't miss any update in future. The cemetery was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that felt peaceful, but the kind that made your skin crawl. Cold wind brushed through the trees, bending the old branches as if they were bowing to the dead. The sky was dull, no sun, no rain, just gray, lifeless silence. A little girl, no older than 7, wandered through the narrow gravel path. Her coat was oversized, her shoes muddy, and her eyes far too tired for someone so young. She wasn't there to visit anyone. In truth, she had no one left to visit. She came to the graveyard often, not because she enjoyed it, but because no one looked for her there. It was her hideout, her escape from the streets, from the cold, from being invisible. She was tracing a cracked tombstone with her tiny fingers when she heard it, a sound so strange, so raw, it made her freeze. A sob, not loud, but broken. She turned her head slowly and saw a man sharply dressed, shoes polished like mirrors, kneeling beside a grave. He looked like he didn't belong there. Not in this world of dirt and wilted flowers. His suit screamed money, but his face told a different story. He was crying, not just tears running down his cheeks. He was breaking. The kind of crying you only see in people who've lost more than they could ever explain. The little girl watched him, hidden behind a marble angel statue. Something about him didn't feel scary. He wasn't dangerous. He was damaged. Then she saw him reach into his coat pocket and pull out a small locket. He kissed it gently, then placed it at the base of the headstone. She couldn't hear his words clearly, but then 2 of them cut through the air like a whisper to her soul. My daughter. Her heart stopped. Her knees buckled. The world spun. She blinked hard. Did she hear that right? The man said it softly, almost like a prayer, like a secret he had buried too deep. My daughter. The girl took a step forward, unable to stop herself. She didn't know why, but those 2 words hit something inside her. Something she didn't understand yet. Something terrifying. She stepped on a dry leaf crunch. The man turned sharply. Their eyes met. And time just paused. He looked at her like he'd seen a ghost. His lips parted, but he said nothing. Her hands trembled, and her throat went dry. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't. Something was holding her in place. The man stood up slowly, brushing the dirt off his trousers. His eyes never left hers. You heard me, didn't you? He asked softly. The girl said nothing. He took a step closer. I didn't mean to scare you, he added, voice low and careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he spoke too loud. The girl glanced at the headstone. It read, Margaret Hale, loving mother, forever missed. 1958 to 2002. The last name, Hale, the same last name she used at the shelter. She thought the lady who gave it to her made it up. But now it felt like a missing piece. What's your name? The man asked gently. She hesitated. She'd lied about her name so many times she barely remembered the truth. But this time, she whispered, Lila. The man froze again. His face changed from sadness to something deeper, something broken and hopeful at the same time. Lila, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it on his tongue, as if it were familiar. How old are you? 7. He knelt again, eye level now. His hands were trembling. My daughter would have been 7. Her breath caught in her chest. He didn't blink. Where's your mother, Lila? Lila looked down. Her fingers curled into her sleeves. She hated that question. I don't know. He closed his eyes for a moment. His jaw clenched. as if he wanted to scream but swallowed the scream whole. "I lost her," he whispered. "Not just my mother, but someone else too." Lila's voice was barely audible. "You said, my daughter. Why?" His eyes shimmered. "Because?" He hesitated, and then, like pouring from a wound that had waited too long, he said, "Because I had a daughter. But she was taken from me." Lila's world blurred. What did he mean? He reached for the locket, opened it. Inside, a tiny picture of a baby wrapped in a pink blanket, a hospital wristband barely visible. A note scribbled in shaky handwriting. Lila, June 2nd. Her birth date. Her name. Everything snapped. She felt dizzy. The wind picked up again, but now it felt colder. Like something had just shifted in the air. She stared at the picture, at the date, at the name. Her name. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over her own feet. "No," she said, voice trembling. "No, that's not me. That can't be." But her words betrayed her heart. Deep down, something had always felt missing, off, like a story half told. A lullaby she couldn't remember the end of. "Where did you find that?" she asked, voice cracking. He didn't move. "It's the only thing they let me keep. When they told me she died." Lila looked up sharply. "Who told you?" He hesitated. "That's the thing," he said. "I never saw the body. Just a birth, then nothing. They said she didn't make it. But I never believed it. I looked for years. They called me crazy." He looked straight at her now. "But now I'm not so sure." And in that moment, everything changed. Not just for him, not just for her, but for whatever fate had brought them both to this grave on the same day at the same time. Lila's breathing grew heavier. Her chest rose and fell like a wave crashing in a storm. She looked again at the photo, that baby wrapped in the blanket, the tiny hospital tag on her wrist, her name scribbled with a shaky hand. Why did everything inside her feel like it was folding in? "I don't understand," she said, her voice more air than sound. "How do you have that picture?" The man, her maybe father, looked down at it like he had a ritual carved into his bones. "This is the only proof I ever had that you existed." "I don't even remember anything," Lila said, more to herself than to him. He nodded slowly. "You were taken from the hospital that night. They told me you died before I even held you. But something inside me, it never believed them." Lila's eyes locked with his. "You think I'm her?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But the way you looked at that grave, the name, the age, your name, how many coincidences does it take before it's not a coincidence anymore?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because her mind wasn't in the cemetery anymore. It was back in the shadows of alleyways, in the cold of cardboard nights, in every time she'd looked up at the stars and wondered why no one had ever come for her. Maybe someone had. Maybe someone was looking, just not in the right place. He pulled something else from his coat, a faded envelope. "I never opened this. It came the day after they told me she was gone. No return address. Just silence." He offered it to her. Lila stared. Her fingers twitched. She reached out slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, but the seal was unbroken. She looked up at him. "Why now?" He gave her a sad smile. "Because maybe you were never meant to open it until you were ready." Her fingers trembled as she tore the flap open. Inside was a folded sheet. No greeting. No signature. Just a sentence. "She's alive, but you can't find her." Lila's hands clenched. What is this?" she whispered. He shook his head. "I don't know. I thought it was a cruel joke, but I couldn't throw it away. And now," he looked at her again, this time differently. Not like a stranger. Not even like a lost father. But like someone who had just seen a ghost and wasn't afraid. Lila wanted to ask him so many things, but none of the words would come out. Because that's when she remembered something. A lullaby. Soft, gentle. Not the words, just the tune. She never knew where it came from, but it always played in her head when she couldn't sleep. She hummed it once, in front of an old social worker. The woman had gone quiet, looked at her oddly, and said, "Where did you learn that?" She never had an answer. She hummed it now, just a whisper of a melody. The man's face changed instantly. His eyes filled with something that went beyond tears, something like a scream behind the eyes. "I used to sing that," he choked. "To her. In the NICU. Before they took her." Lila's voice cracked. No one else ever knew it. Silence fell again, but it wasn't empty this time. It was loaded. Heavy. Sacred. He didn't move. Neither did she. Something unsaid passed between them, like a message written in the wind, not loud, but undeniable. He looked down at her shoes. Worn out. Holes on the sides. No socks. "Where are you staying?" he asked gently. "Nowhere," she replied, not out of pity, but fact. He nodded once, like a man whose soul had just been split in half and sewn back together all at once. "I have a car parked down the road. There's food. Warmth. I can take you somewhere safe." But she took a step back. "I don't know you." His face fell, but he understood. "You're right. You shouldn't trust me. I'm just a man crying at a grave." She stayed frozen for a moment longer, then said, "Why did you come here today?" He looked at the grave again. "Because today is the day she was born." Her lips parted. June 2nd. The day they told her was her birthday. The world felt like it was turning too fast. She could barely keep up with what was real anymore. Then he said quietly, "I was going to stop coming. This was going to be the last time. I thought maybe I had to let go. But now I don't know if I can." Lila looked up at him, then down at the envelope again, then at the locket in his hand. Part of her wanted to run. Run far away. Because this was too big. Too heavy. But another part, a louder part, whispered, "Stay." Because something about this man, this moment, didn't feel like danger. It felt like a door she'd been walking past her whole life had finally creaked open. And just beyond it was the truth. She took a slow breath. "If you try anything weird, I'll scream." He smiled gently, but not in amusement, in respect. "That's fair." She nodded once. He started walking, not toward her, but toward the gate, then stopped and turned. "I'll wait by the road," he said. 5 minutes. "If you're not there, I'll leave." He didn't ask again. He didn't beg. He walked away. Lila stood there for a full minute, maybe more. Her heart pounded in her ears. Her mind was a storm, but something inside her was moving, like a tide shifting, like a seed cracking open. She looked at the grave once more, then at the picture in her hand. And then, without thinking, without planning, she began to walk. Not fast, not slow, but like someone who had just taken the first step towards something they didn't yet understand, but knew they had to face, no matter what. The car was sleek, jet black with silent tires that made no sound on the gravel road. Lila had never seen anything like it up close. Her reflection wavered in the polished door as she approached. She kept her distance at first, standing on the sidewalk, watching as the man, whose name she still didn't know, opened the passenger door and waited. He didn't speak. He didn't gesture. He just waited, like he knew any pressure would send her running. After a long pause, Lila moved forward. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Like her feet were following something her mind hadn't caught up to. She slid into the seat, half expecting to be locked in. But the door didn't click. The windows didn't black out. The man simply shut the door gently and walked around to the driver's side. Once inside, he didn't start the engine. Instead, he sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes staring ahead. "You don't trust me yet," he said softly. "That's okay, but I'll answer anything you want to ask." She looked out the window. "What's your name?" He smiled faintly, as if hearing that question made something inside him breathe again. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Hale. The same last name." She turned to him. "Did you love her?" "Your wife." His face changed instantly. Pain. Regret. Something darker flickered beneath the surface. I loved her more than anything, he said. But love doesn't always win. She studied his face. There was truth in the way his jaw clenched, in the way his voice cracked without him realizing it. What happened to her? He hesitated. She died in childbirth. Complications. They saved you, but told me you didn't make it. Lila looked down. Her fingers gripped her sleeves tighter. So you believed I was dead all this time? Ethan nodded. I tried to accept it, but there was never a body. No grave. Just a phone call and silence. And then, that letter. It broke me. Then why didn't you look for me? I did, he whispered. For years. I spent millions. Hired investigators. But no trail. No clues. They called me crazy. Said I was in denial. Eventually, I became someone else. Built walls. Chased money to numb the ache. Lila turned away. She didn't know how to feel. This man was a stranger. But somehow every word he spoke unraveled something inside her chest, like a knot she never knew was finally loosening. The car started. He didn't ask her where to go. He just drove. Quiet roads stretched before them. Trees blurred past. For a moment, it felt like she was floating through a dream she wasn't ready to wake from. I lived in a shelter once, she said suddenly, voice low. Then ran away. The people there were not kind. I kept moving. Ethan didn't interrupt. I used to draw faces. Imaginary people. One of them looked a lot like you. He turned to her, surprised. Why? She shrugged. I don't know. I thought I made him up. A man in a suit. Crying. Always crying. Ethan gripped the wheel tighter. Maybe we were connected. Even without knowing it. She looked at him, uncertain. If you were my dad, why would anyone lie to you? Why would they say I died? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because there's more to this. Something I never told anyone. Lila's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I come from a family that owns half the state, he said bitterly. Old money. The kind that controls hospitals, law firms, even courts. When I married someone they didn't approve of, your mother, they turned on me. She blinked. They didn't want her? They didn't want you, he said coldly. They said you'd ruin everything. That blood like hers didn't belong in the Hale legacy. Lila stared at him, horrified. I left everything behind, Ethan continued. Chose her. I didn't care about the money, but I underestimated how far they'd go. Lila's voice cracked. You think your own family hid me? Ethan nodded slowly. That's what I've feared all these years. I had no proof. Just whispers. Missing records. And that letter. The letter. She's alive, but you can't find her. Lila hugged herself tighter. If that's true, she said, voice trembling, then whoever did this still has secrets. He nodded again. And we're going to find them. Silence returned. Not heavy, but sharp. Ethan pulled the car over by a quiet lake. The sun was setting now, orange streaks reflecting on the still water. It was the kind of beauty Lila had never allowed herself to notice before. He reached into the glove box and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. I wasn't sure, he said. But if this really is you. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small stuffed bear. Worn. Faded pink. One eye missing. She gasped. She didn't know why, but the sight of it made her eyes burn. She remembered that bear. In flashes. Someone had once held it over her crib. A soft voice. A warm laugh. I kept it, he whispered. Even when they told me it didn't matter. Lila touched it gently. Her hand trembled. That wasn't a stranger's toy. That was hers. I remember this, she whispered. In my dreams. Ethan's voice cracked. Then maybe I'm not crazy after all. They sat there, just breathing, not sure what to do with the pieces that had suddenly fallen in their laps. Then Lila asked the question she hadn't dared to ask. If we prove it, that I'm yours, what then? He looked at her, steady. Then you're not alone anymore. Then you'll never be. Tears threatened her eyes again. She looked away. "You're still rich, aren't you?" she asked suddenly, trying to sound cold. He gave a faint smile. "Yes, but it doesn't mean anything without you." She didn't reply, just hugged the stuffed bear tighter. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, "Where are we going now?" He started the car again. "To someone who might finally tell us the truth." And with that, they drove into the night. Not as a stranger and a child, but as two broken pieces inching toward something whole. The car turned onto a narrow road lined with wild trees, their branches forming a tangled archway above them. The world felt different here, quieter, heavier, like the ground itself remembered things people tried to forget. Lila looked at the house ahead. It was old, maybe older than any building she'd ever seen. Faded yellow paint peeled off the walls, the wooden porch sagged, and ivy climbed along the sides like nature was trying to pull it back into the earth. But one window glowed, a soft, flickering light like someone had been waiting. Ethan parked and looked at her. "She used to work at the hospital," he said. "She was the last nurse who saw you, and the only one who reached out." Lila didn't speak. Her hands clutched the stuffed bear tighter. Ethan got out first, walking slowly up the porch steps. The wood creaked under his weight. He knocked twice. Nothing. Then the door opened, just a crack. An old woman peeked out, eyes cautious, until they landed on Ethan. Her face shifted instantly from suspicion to something deeper. Fear and guilt. "You came," she said quietly. "And I brought her," Ethan replied. The woman's gaze moved past him. Lila stepped forward, unsure if she should be here. But when the woman saw her, really saw her, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She's real." Ethan stepped aside. "We need the truth. No more silence." The woman opened the door fully now. "Come inside." Quickly, they entered a dim living room filled with old furniture, dust, and the smell of forgotten time. A kettle whistled softly in the background, but no one moved to turn it off. The woman sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "I wasn't supposed to say anything," she began. "Back then, the hospital was controlled by the Hale Foundation. Your father's family. They made things disappear." Lila stared, her voice a whisper. "What did they do to me?" The woman looked at her with eyes heavy from years of holding secrets. "You were born healthy, screaming and pink. But they took you away before your father even saw you. Said there were complications. But I knew they were lying. I overheard them say, 'She's better off erased.'" Ethan's fists clenched, rage burning behind his calm. "They paid everyone off. Told us you died. But they didn't kill you, Lila. They gave you away. To cover their tracks. To make sure you never had a claim to anything." Tears burned Lila's eyes. "Why didn't you stop them?" "I tried," the woman whispered. "But by the time I found out where you were sent, you were gone. The trail was cold, and I was afraid." Lila looked away. The truth stung worse than lies. "Do you know who took me?" she asked. The woman nodded slowly, and then said the name of someone neither of them expected. The room fell into a breathless silence. Lila's voice trembled. "Say it again." The old nurse leaned forward, her eyes locked on Lila's. "You were taken by Veronica Hale." Ethan stepped back like someone had punched him in the chest. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. "My sister." The nurse nodded. "She arranged it all. The fake reports, the adoption papers, even paid the doctor to forge your death certificate." "But why?" Lila asked, her words nearly drowned by the pounding in her ears. Ethan turned away, gripping the edge of a table to steady himself. "She always hated your mother. Thought she ruined our family's legacy. When I cut ties with them, Veronica took it personally. I thought she'd eventually move on. I never imagined. She didn't want the scandal," the nurse added quietly. "A child born to someone outside the family's elite circle, a child who could inherit everything. You were a threat, Lila." a threat they erased. Lila's lips parted, but no words came. Her identity, her pain, all twisted into something so much uglier than she could have imagined. "You said she gave me away," Lila whispered. "To who?" The nurse hesitated. "To a family that owed her favors. They didn't care about you. You were just part of a transaction. By the time I tried to track them, they'd already vanished. You were lost in the system." Lila's hands shook. "She made me a ghost." Ethan turned around, his face pale with fury. "Where is she now?" "She still lives in the family estate," the nurse said, glancing toward the window like someone might be watching. "She doesn't know you're alive, Ethan. She thinks you gave up years ago." He smiled bitterly. "She's about to learn how wrong she was." The air turned heavier. Lila's voice was quiet, but clear. "I want to see her." Both adults looked at her. "You don't have to face her," Ethan said. "I'll handle it." "No," she replied. "She tried to erase me. I want her to see what she failed to bury." The nurse stood, slowly walking to a dusty cabinet. She pulled out a file wrapped in cloth and handed it to Ethan. "I kept this hidden. It's a copy of the original hospital records. DNA swabs, blood type, even your mother's last words. It's all there." Lila looked at the file like it was sacred. Then Ethan looked at her, something fierce and protective in his eyes. "We're going to her. Tonight." Lila didn't hesitate. This wasn't just about answers anymore. It was about reclaiming everything she was never allowed to have, and making the woman who stole her childhood face the truth she buried. The gates to the Hale estate creaked open with a long, reluctant groan. The mansion beyond stood like a monument of pride and control, its towering stone walls and flawless windows hiding decades of secrets behind polished glass. Lila stood beside Ethan as the car rolled up the driveway. Her fingers tightened around the stuffed bear in her lap, the same one that had outlived the lie of her death. Ethan parked and turned to her. "You sure?" Lila nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." The grand doors opened before they even rang the bell. Veronica Hale stood there, elegant, cold, untouched by time. Her eyes locked on Ethan first and narrowed. "I told you never to come back here," she said sharply, her voice like polished marble. He didn't flinch. "You told a lot of lies, Veronica. I stopped listening years ago." Then her gaze shifted to the girl beside him. And for the first time, a crack appeared. She blinked. A small breath escaped her lips. Lila stepped forward. Veronica's expression hardened instantly. "This is a mistake," she said. "You don't know what you're doing, Ethan." But Ethan pulled out the file, the one the nurse had given him. "I know exactly what I'm doing. You stole my child. You orchestrated her disappearance. And you told me she died." Veronica didn't even blink. "I protected this family. You were reckless." "She was a scandal. She was a baby," he roared. Lila stepped closer, lifting the locket from around her neck. "I don't remember your face," she said to Veronica. "But I remember the cold." Veronica turned away. "You can't prove anything." Ethan threw the folder onto a nearby table. Hospital records, DNA, and a living, breathing daughter who's stronger than anything you tried to destroy. Veronica's hand trembled, just for a second. Then Lila said the words she'd waited her whole life to say. "You tried to erase me, but I'm still here." The room went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. And in that stillness, something shattered. Not glass, not a plate, but the illusion Veronica had built so carefully, so cruelly. Ethan reached out and took Lila's hand. "I'm taking her home," he said. "And this time, no one will stop me." Veronica said nothing. She couldn't, because there was nothing left to hide behind. Lila turned, stuffed bear in one hand, her father's hand in the other. And together, they walked out the same doors that once tried to keep them apart. But now the story was different. Now the girl with no name had taken it back. And the family that buried her truth could no longer bury her light. no matter how deep the truth is buried, no matter how powerful the people who try to silence it. The heart remembers. And sometimes, it takes just 2 words to awaken a past that was never truly lost. This story reminds us that love leaves traces in lullabies, in old toys, in the eyes of a child who was never meant to be forgotten. Even in a world full of lies, injustice, and betrayal, the truth always finds a way to rise. And when it does, it doesn't just heal the broken. It exposes the ones who broke them.